The silent return of Megan Wantson. The vanishing. Megan Wantson was only 10 years old when she disappeared without a trace. It was a warm spring afternoon, and she had been walking home from the library, her backpack filled with books on her favorite subject, ancient history. The streets of the quiet suburban neighborhood were bathed in sunlight, and the air smelled of freshly mowed grass. Her parents, Lisa and Robert Wantson, had no reason to suspect anything out of the ordinary when they waved her off that morning. But when night fell and she didn't return, panic set in. A search ensued. The neighborhood was scoured by the police, volunteers, and search dogs. Flyers with Megan's photo were posted on every street corner. News outlets covered the story, but as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, hope began to fade. No one had seen or heard from Megan, and there were no leads. The only thing left was an empty bedroom and an aching void in the hearts of her parents, who never stopped searching. The dark years. For 2 decades, the world moved on. Megan's disappearance became a cold case, a statistic among thousands. Lisa and Robert Wantson never recovered. They clung to memories of their daughter, visiting her old room on her birthday, lighting candles on her missing poster, and praying for a miracle. Meanwhile, Megan's life was far different than anything they could have imagined. After the abduction, Megan was held captive in a dilapidated house deep in the forest, miles away from civilization. Her captor, a man with a twisted mind, kept her locked in a small room for years. She was given little food, and her days were marked by silence and fear. But despite the constant isolation, Megan never gave up on the thought of escape. Through all the years of pain and suffering, Megan learned to survive. She built strength from her resilience, and every day she dreamed of a future where she could one day reunite with her family. The only thing that kept her going was the hope that somehow, someday, someone would find her. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Discovery. It wasn't until Megan had turned 30 that the unthinkable happened. A routine search by a local hiker in the dense woods uncovered an abandoned cabin, its structure almost hidden by overgrowth. The hiker, upon entering, was horrified to find traces of life: broken furniture, food wrappers, and, most shockingly, a young woman curled up in the corner, her face pale but alive. The woman was Megan Wantson. When the authorities arrived, Megan was weak, disoriented, and covered in dirt. Her clothes were ragged, and her hair was matted from years of neglect. But her eyes were filled with a fire that only those who had survived the worst could understand. The police rushed her to the hospital, where doctors quickly began to treat her for malnutrition and injuries. It was a miraculous discovery. After 20 years, Megan was found alive. Reunions and revelations. News of Megan's return spread like wildfire. The Wantson family was contacted immediately. Lisa and Robert, now in their early 50s, were in disbelief when they received the call. They hadn't given up hope, but they had accepted the painful reality that their daughter might never return. Yet here she was, alive. The reunion between Megan and her parents was overwhelming. Lisa held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face, while Robert spoke through a choked voice, repeatedly whispering how much he loved her. Megan, though confused and emotionally scarred, felt the warmth of her parents' embrace. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, yet it felt surreal. But as time passed, the true horror of Megan's ordeal began to surface. During her months in captivity, she had been subjected to psychological and physical abuse. The man who had kidnapped her was a recluse with a twisted obsession. He had kept her in isolation, trying to break her spirit. Through therapy, Megan began to piece together the trauma she had suffered. But even in the darkest moments, she found solace in one truth. She had survived. And now, after 2 decades, she was free. Healing and hope. Adjusting to life after such an unimaginable experience was not easy. Megan struggled with nightmares and the overwhelming sense of having lost so many years of her life. But with the support of her family, her doctors, and the community that had rallied around her, she began to heal. Megan also became an advocate for missing children, speaking at events and raising awareness about the plight of others like her. She met with other survivors of abductions, offering a message of hope and resilience. Though her story was one of horror, she was determined to use her experience to help others find their way home. As the years passed, the Watson family rebuilt their lives, never forgetting the precious time they had lost. Megan's parents watched with pride as their daughter flourished in ways they had once thought impossible. She returned to her studies, completed her degree in history, and even began teaching. Though her past would never be erased, Megan had found a new beginning, proving that no matter how dark the road may be, there is always light at the end. And that, after all, is what kept her alive through those 20 years of unimaginable silence.